The camera snapped. Flashbulbs popped like fireworks outside the federal courthouse in downtown Los Angeles. Reporters crowded the steps, jostling for space as a black SUV pulled up and the door swung open. Out stepped Tom Cruise, sunglasses on, jaw clenched, surrounded by his legal team. He didn't smile. Not this time. Behind him, the whispers swirled louder, $100 million. The fine wasn't just historic, it was personal. And the man who'd made it happen was already trending across every platform, Kash Patel. Just 2 days earlier, America had watched in disbelief as Patel walked into a congressional hearing room with a stack of sealed documents and a mission to expose what he called the most reckless abuse of celebrity power in modern U.S. history. Tom Cruise, he claimed, had funneled influence, funds, and backdoor messaging into shaping public opinion on key military and intelligence issues Patel said were never his to touch. This isn't about movies anymore, Patel had told a stunned MSNBC panel. This is about a man who played war on screen and then tried to manipulate real-world policy behind the scenes. There's a line, and he crossed it. Cruise's team immediately called it a political stunt. Baseless. Laughable, his lawyer had said. Kash Patel is trying to build a brand off one of the most respected actors alive. But then came the documents, phone records, wire transfers, anonymized notes from a whistleblower inside a consulting group that allegedly received Cruise-backed funding to sway policy memos on drone deployment. Suddenly, the room didn't feel like theater anymore. It felt like truth. And that's when the Department of Justice stepped in. Fines. Formal charges under lobbying transparency laws. Cruise's camp insisted on innocence, but public perception was already crumbling. On X, formerly Twitter, Patel dropped a single post. "You spent 30 years playing the hero, Tom. But in real life? Actions have consequences, $100 million is just the beginning." America split down the middle. Hollywood elite closed ranks, calling it a witch hunt. But veterans, analysts, and even some moderates started questioning why Cruise had ever been in those rooms to begin with. And now, with cameras rolling and Tom stepping into court, Kash Patel was already seated inside, calm, silent, staring straight ahead. The battle wasn't over. It had just begun. Inside the courtroom, the tension was electric. Tom Cruise sat stiffly at the defense table, his expression unreadable. Across from him, Kash Patel leaned back in his seat, calm and poised, flipping through a neatly tabbed binder filled with statements, receipts, and classified testimony summaries. The press had been kept outside, but that didn't stop every media outlet in America from live-streaming expert commentary. CNN framed it as a high-stakes celebrity takedown. Fox News labeled it a reckoning between fame and fact. X was a battleground, split between die-hard Cruise fans and those rallying behind Patel with hashtags like #accountabilityisnotacting and #Patel did what Congress wouldn't. The prosecutor's opening statement didn't hold back. This is not about a film. This is about influence. About a man whose image of power became power, and who used it in the shadows. Cruise's attorneys objected immediately, but the damage was done. Meanwhile, in the court of public opinion, Kash Patel was on a roll. That same morning, he appeared virtually on several major networks. His message was consistent and unyielding. You can be the best stuntman in Hollywood, but that doesn't give you clearance to steer national security discussions from your private jet. On The View, one host tried defending Cruise, calling him a passionate American. Patel clapped back instantly. Passion doesn't excuse manipulation. If a non-celebrity did what Tom did, they'd be in prison already. The quote went viral. By noon, TikTokers were remixing it over action movie music. Instagram accounts were posting side-by-side shots of Cruise's red carpet glam versus his courthouse scowl. But behind the media storm, the legal strategy was just beginning to unfold. Patel wasn't only presenting himself as a whistleblower, he had witnesses lined up. Former advisors. Ex-military consultants. a cybersecurity analyst who claimed Cruz's team had pushed for surveillance amendments in private. Every piece fit together in a way that felt disturbingly deliberate. The courtroom wasn't just a space for legal resolution. It was now a battlefield of reputation. And Kash Patel had come loaded with ammunition. The morning after Patel's court appearance, the media frenzy intensified. Every headline screamed scandal. But it wasn't just the legal implications that drew eyes, it was the collision of two drastically different worlds, Hollywood fantasy and national security reality. Outside the courthouse, protesters gathered. Some wore Top Gun jackets in support of Cruz, waving signs like, "Tom fights for freedom." Others stood behind Kash Patel, holding posters that read, "This isn't a movie, this is our future," and "Patel a PR." Cable networks ran split-screen coverage. On the left, footage of Cruz on jet skis, dangling from helicopters, charming reporters. On the right, Patel dissecting surveillance policy, calmly calling out the misuse of star power. Then, something unexpected happened. Leaked emails surfaced. A whistleblower, anonymous but clearly close to Cruz's production team, released documents hinting that Cruz's influence wasn't just casual. He had allegedly pushed for changes to a Department of Defense policy during a private advisory dinner with high-ranking officials, all while filming a movie partially funded by a government grant. It wasn't illegal, but it smelled like special access. Kash Patel seized on it immediately. If a normal citizen tried that, they'd be accused of lobbying without registration, he told Newsmax that night. Tom Cruise calls it creative consultation. I call it influence peddling. Social media exploded. Hashtag Cruise Control Gone Wrong began trending. Conservative influencers rallied. Even some moderates started to ask questions. Cruz's team scrambled. His spokesperson released a statement denying any policy tampering, claiming the actor was merely offering patriotic insight. But the damage was already rippling. Memes went viral, showing Cruz in military gear photoshopped onto a Monopoly board with the caption, "Skip democracy. Go directly to the Pentagon." Meanwhile, Kash Patel dropped another bombshell. A voice memo. It was allegedly Cruz, frustrated, cocky, recorded mid-conversation. "Guys like Patel don't get how this country works. You need influence. You need reach. That's what I have. That's what matters." The courtroom didn't hear it yet, but America did. And by nightfall, the story was no longer about $100 million. It was about arrogance, access, and whether celebrity had finally overreached. Within hours of the leaked voice memo, newsrooms went into overdrive. Commentators couldn't stop replaying the clip. Every time Tom Cruise's voice snapped, "That's what I have. That's what matters," it sounded less like confidence and more like entitlement. Like someone who'd forgotten the line between celebrity and constitution. Kash Patel didn't wait long to respond. On Real America podcast, he leaned into the microphone, voice calm but piercing. "You're right, Tom. You do have reach. You do have influence. But this country was never built on either. It was built on accountability." That line was clipped, subtitled, and posted across platforms within minutes. Gen Z ran with it. Accountability a Fame shirt started selling on Etsy. A trending post on Threads simply read, "He fought fictional wars. Patel fought real ones." Back inside the courthouse, the prosecution's witness list tightened like a noose. One after another, former defense consultants and mid-level bureaucrats testified that Cruz had sat in on meetings he had no clearance for, under the excuse of script research. But what had once been laughed off as actor enthusiasm now looked dangerously like access abuse. The tension in court was suffocating. Tom Cruise's legal team grew visibly agitated. Their lead counsel objected repeatedly, accusing Patel's side of performative slander. The judge overruled. Then came the big hit. A former Department of Defense advisor, speaking under oath, revealed that Cruz's private foundation had donated large sums to an NGO lobbying for military policy changes directly tied to scenes in his upcoming film. The connection between Hollywood and policy had never looked murkier, or more suspicious. Outside, a reporter asked Patel if he thought Cruz should serve prison time. His answer? That's not up to me. But if the American people don't wake up to how they're being manipulated, by stars, by money, by illusion, then we're all just extras in someone else's movie. Inside the courtroom, Cruz sat frozen. Not acting. Not smiling. Not running. Just watching the real-world consequences close in like the final scene of a film he didn't write, and couldn't direct. The facade was cracking. For decades, Tom Cruise had stood untouchable, Hollywood's golden child, the ageless icon, the guy who did his own stunts and never missed a beat. But now, every headline screamed a new narrative. The actor who overreached. Power, not popcorn. From action hero to policy villain. On the morning of day 5 in court, Cruz showed up without sunglasses. Without the flash of confidence. His suit was perfect, his tie centered, but his hands trembled as he clutched his briefcase. Cameras captured the moment and zoomed in. Analysts debated it for hours. Meanwhile, Kash Patel wasn't just gaining momentum in the courtroom, he was building a movement outside of it. His public appearances doubled. Talk shows, podcasts, live stream panels. He wasn't yelling, he didn't need to. His strategy was controlled exposure, calculated precision. Every time he spoke, he dropped facts, receipts, quotes, and made one thing clear. Tom Cruise represents a new kind of threat, one that hides behind charm and scripts, but plays real games with real consequences. When asked if he regretted going public, Patel smiled and said, "If I didn't do it, who would? Congress? Hollywood's best friend? The people need someone who's not afraid to lose a role for telling the truth." At the same time, stories began to surface from inside Hollywood itself. A-list actors anonymously hinted at Cruz's obsession with power, others suggested that his foundation was more than a philanthropic project, that it was a strategy machine. Then came the security footage. A bombshell clip released by a journalist showed Cruz attending a closed-door session with military consultants, at a location marked classified. He wasn't escorted. He wasn't briefed. He just walked in, sat down, and took notes. The internet melted. Even die-hard fans began to question what they were defending. Was this patriotism or propaganda? Was Cruz the victim, or the architect? On X, a new post from Patel simply read, "The stunts are over. No hashtags. No explanation. Just 3 words that echoed louder than any script." Inside the courtroom, the jury sat tight, eyes forward. America wasn't just watching. It was deciding. The 6th day of the trial opened with a shift in tone. Gone was the controlled, methodical tempo of the earlier hearings. In its place, urgency, tension, and the growing sense that something irreversible was unfolding. The prosecution began the morning with a jarring montage, footage, audio recordings, and communications obtained under subpoena. The courtroom lights dimmed. On screen, Tom Cruise was seen attending classified briefings under the guise of consultation, asking pointed questions not about film accuracy but about real-world policy implications. At one point, he was heard asking, "So if the drone range changes, could that alter strategic footprint in the Middle East?" The room went silent. Cruise looked visibly shaken. His defense team scrambled to call the footage contextually misleading, but the narrative was already locked in. This wasn't a man researching a character. This was a man inching into the mechanics of real global power. Kash Patel didn't flinch. Sitting at the front bench, he listened, arms crossed, as the prosecutors laid out how Cruz's personal brand had been leveraged to open back doors. His fame, charisma, and global recognition weren't the crime, but the way they were deployed, unchecked, may have been. Then Patel himself took the stand. The courtroom leaned forward. He spoke with precision, not dramatics, not theater. Just hard facts. He outlined timelines, exposed meeting logs, cross-referenced statements, and detailed Cruz's connections to lobby groups that had worked to push defense contracts in tandem with his film projects. "I'm not here because I dislike Hollywood," Patel said. "I'm here because Hollywood, at its most powerful, thinks it can govern. And governance doesn't belong to actors. It belongs to the people." Cruz didn't look at him. But the nation did. News anchors paused mid-segment. TikTok creators uploaded clips of Patel's statement in slow motion with the caption, "The day celebrity met consequence." Even late-night comedians who once idolized Cruz were careful now, tiptoeing between satire and apology. Back in court, the judge called a recess. Everyone exhaled. But it wasn't over, not even close. Because outside the courthouse, a federal ethics committee was quietly reviewing a sealed file Patel had submitted that morning. Something bigger was coming. And for Tom Cruise, the final cut might not be his to direct. The sun hadn't yet risen over D.C. when the sealed file Patel had submitted made its way through the Federal Ethics Committee's early morning emergency session. A quiet alert was sent to top oversight members. The subject line read, "Potential violation of Title 18, Section 219, Foreign Influence and Public Trust." Back in Los Angeles, cameras clicked as Tom Cruise exited the courthouse looking more like a man headed to judgment than a red carpet. His team said nothing. His fans had grown silent. And Kash Patel, always one step ahead, was already on his way to a Capitol Hill briefing. The memo leaked by noon. It contained alleged documentation linking Cruz's production firm to a foreign tech consultancy. That consultancy, according to Patel's research, was lobbying for data access privileges in joint military AI collaborations, right around the same time Cruz was filming a sci-fi thriller with a shockingly accurate military tech plot. Coincidence? Patel didn't think so. And now neither did half the Senate. A bipartisan letter was drafted within 36 hours calling for a special investigation into celebrity intermediaries influencing national defense decisions through creative pretexts. Though Cruz's name wasn't printed, everyone knew who they meant. The court of public opinion exploded. People who once cheered Cruz's every mission now asked whether any of those missions had been metaphors hiding real agendas. TikTok stitched clips of Mission Impossible with headlines reading "Mission Infiltration" and "He did his own stunts, and maybe his own lobbying." Kimmel mocked the fall. Rogan demanded accountability. Tucker called it a symptom of the elite illusion. Through it all, Patel never raised his voice. He simply released a short video clip of himself walking out of the Ethics Committee's offices. No music. No edits. Just one caption. "If you wanted to act like a policymaker, you should have run for office." It trended for 14 hours straight. Inside the courtroom, the judge requested an expedited review of the new documents. Cruz's team tried to delay, but the narrative was too far gone. Even his lead counsel whispered the unthinkable, settlement options. But Kash Patel didn't want money. He wanted precedent. And he was just getting started. The courtroom was colder than usual. Not physically, emotionally. The smiles had vanished. The side chatter gone. Even the press pool felt restrained, as if everyone present knew they were watching something bigger than a trial. They were witnessing a legacy unravel in real time. Tom Cruise sat still, hair perfect, jaw set. But gone was the star aura. In its place, a man cornered by something he couldn't charm, outrun, or rewrite: truth. The prosecution, armed now with Patel's newest submissions, laid out a timeline of influence that made headlines seem like footnotes. Cruz's production firm had indeed maintained regular contact with policy advisors, intelligence contractors, and foreign tech developers. The email headers didn't lie, nor did the receipts. What began as creative input had evolved into undisclosed consultations, anonymous donations to lobbying fronts, and, most damning of all, a private stake in a drone mapping software company contracted by the Department of Defense. Kash Patel wasn't even in the courtroom that day. He didn't need to be. He was in Washington, speaking before the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee on Media Ethics and Influence. Calm. Focused. Deadly. We created an ecosystem where fame grants access, and access becomes influence. And we never asked, what if that influence isn't earned? What if it's bought, branded, and exported through global screens? The committee sat in silence. Even the loudest partisan voices didn't interrupt. They knew the blowback would come, but not from voters this time. From citizens. From veterans. From people tired of watching truth edited for entertainment value. Cruz's team made one final move. They requested a media gag order. The judge denied it. Outside, the world already knew too much. Cruz's wax statue was quietly removed from a celebrity museum in New York. A sponsorship deal was pulled from his latest film. His foundation's board held an emergency session, without him. Meanwhile, Patel's following had grown into something else. Not just support. Loyalty. A rare kind in modern politics. People didn't just believe him. They trusted him to say what they couldn't. And Tom Cruise, once the face of fearless rebellion, now looked like the very system he used to defy. Day 10. No theme music. No stylized cuts. Just the rhythmic hum of courtroom air vents and the scratch of pens on legal pads. The verdict wasn't in yet, but the atmosphere was unmistakable. This wasn't about whether Tom Cruise would serve jail time, it was about whether celebrity immunity had finally met its limit. Kash Patel wasn't in the room, again. Instead, his name echoed in the arguments, the exhibits, the tone of every question. What started as an exposé had morphed into a nationwide debate on power, who holds it, who abuses it, and who finally says, enough. Cruz's defense made a final plea, arguing that he had only ever sought to serve his country through storytelling. But the jury looked tired of the act. They'd seen too much. They'd heard the recordings, the emails, the financial trails wrapped in cinematic gloss. Outside, protest signs had changed. No more playful jabs. Now they read. No more celebrity cabals. Truth doesn't need a trailer. Kash called it. A CNN anchor described it as a cultural reckoning. Fox called it a realignment of trust. Social media declared it the trial where the star got scripted out. Cruz, seated in silence, stared forward. His team tried to whisper strategies, but his eyes were elsewhere. Maybe rehearsing what came after this. Or realizing there might not be an after. Across the country, Patel's supporters gathered in front of courthouses, military bases, and university campuses, not protesting, not rioting, just watching. Waiting. Holding their breath for the system to finally work. Then, just before recess, the judge made a quiet announcement. In light of new evidence and ongoing investigations, the court will permit the House Oversight Committee to initiate an external ethics review regarding the defendant's undisclosed political influence. The courtroom stirred. So did Washington. This wasn't just about Cruz anymore. It was about precedent. And Kash Patel had ensured that this time, the end of the movie wouldn't fade to black. It would echo. The nation held its breath. At 3:47 p.m., the jury filed in. 12 Americans, ordinary people asked to make an extraordinary decision. They didn't look at Tom Cruise. They didn't need to. Their eyes were steady, their faces calm. When the foreperson stood and read the verdict, it wasn't just words on paper. It was a cultural shift. Guilty on 3 counts of undisclosed lobbying. Fined, $100 million. No prison. Not today. But the blow was still seismic. The courtroom gasped. Cruz closed his eyes, jaw tight. His legacy had taken its final hit, not on screen, not in a box office bomb, but in the judgment of his peers. The cameras outside lit up the sky. Reporters screamed into microphones. Anchors declared it a reckoning for Hollywood elitism. Patel, watching the live feed from his office in D.C., didn't smile. He just nodded once, then turned back to a binder on his desk. There were other names. Other investigations. This was never about one man. Crews left through a side door. No red carpet. No applause. Just silence. Meanwhile, Kash Patel gave one final statement, brief, steady, and aimed at no one in particular. This wasn't about celebrity. It was about consequence. No one's above it, not even the ones who make us believe they are. The quote was etched onto protest signs, posters, even a mural outside a military base. Students studied it. Podcasters unpacked it. The public remembered it. And just like that, the story that began with a smirk and a stage, ended with a verdict and a voice. Not a Hollywood ending. But a real one. And there you have it, a $100 million reckoning, not on a movie set, but in real life. Kash Patel didn't just confront a Hollywood giant, he held him accountable in front of the entire world. Whether you see it as justice served or just the beginning, one thing is clear, fame doesn't make you untouchable. And sometimes, the loudest voices don't come from the red carpet, they come from those who never back down. If you enjoyed this story, hit that subscribe button, drop a comment below, and tell us what you think. Who's next to face the spotlight? We're just getting started. Thanks for watching.